5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hey, welcome back to your favorite pod of all time. I'm joined, as always, with the best host in the land.
Stop it.
His name might rhyme with Sheldon.
Oh.
It might. I don't know. I'm not going to give anything away.
Yeah.
Nah, it's
No
your
spoilers.
boy, Sheldon Hawthorne on the pod.
What it do, baby? And I'm with the one and only A to the what to the J. AJ Tabor.
That's right.
You know, for a long time, I didn't know what your first name was. Legit, I just thought it was your name was just AJ.
Yeah, I still don't know what my
I didn't
first name
realize
is.
it was, Junior. I'm not picking your government
It's
name.
not Junior. It's not Junior.
It's not?
No, it's not Junior. See, a lot of people think.
Really?
And I get it, because I think a lot of AJs are Junior, but I'm not a Junior.
So the J is your middle name?
Yeah. So Adam Jeffrey. I'll put my government out there. I don't care. Jeffrey, yeah, my dad's name is Jeffrey.
Dauber?
Uh-huh. That's the
I
one.
knew it.
Same one.
I'm glad you don't have glasses, brother.
That's why I can't wear them. That's what they told me. They're like, hey, at the hospital when I was born, they're like, hey, just make sure he doesn't wear glasses
They
in the future.
knew straight off
They
the
knew.
bat.
They knew.
They could just tell.
Yeah, it's a vibe.
I like the serial killer gene. Do you think that's real?
The gene?
Yeah, like the
There are
serial
a
killer
lot
gene.
of things that I think that are crazier that are genes. Like the gene where cilantro tastes like soap. That doesn't make sense in my head. I love cilantro.
That's for real?
Yeah, for real. I think Josh has it. But
He
like,
says it tastes like soap.
maybe I'm thinking of someone else, but it's a
I think Josh
genetic.
is a baby.
It's just like a switch, and if it's turned on, my mom has it. My mom has it for
Really?
real. Yeah, she's Mexican, so it's wild that she doesn't like cilantro.
That's wild.
But it's like a switch in the genes. That's cilantro tastes like soap.
Huh.
Doesn't to me. I think it's great.
Cilantro's incredible.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Put it on my tacos, bro.
Right, I need a taco with my cilantro,
Right
you know
now.
what I'm saying?
Okay, let's get into it today. We'll be just yapping all day, but we're really excited to be back. Lessons and blessings. Still 2023.
Still 2023, brother.
Probably a big year, I think, for most of us. I think a big year for both of us. And so we're going to tackle a little bit of trying to put a bow on this year, not just for what's gone on in our lives, but I think the podcast, and then maybe plug a little bit of where we're going to go in the new year. And so we hope that you're still rocking with us and that you'll ride with us all the way to next year.
Absolutely.
Got big things coming, man.
Absolutely. So yeah, man, I was reflecting earlier on the phone before we started this, talking about how 2023 started. And if I had to wrap up the whole year, bro, it's a year of growth. In so many unexpected ways that I did not see coming. And like just the way the year started, like just to put this into perspective, I've only been out of college for about a year and a half. And so, not even a year and a half. When did I graduate college? 2022. I forgot, yeah.
You still on COVID
in May
time.
2022. Anything after COVID is relative.
That's
Time
right,
is relative.
that's right.
Nothing makes sense.
That's right.
So, I've been out of college a year and a half. And in 2020, going from 2021 to 22, then 22, I'm just like, whoa. Where'd the time go?
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy to me.
Quick.
And just to see how the Lord really has spoken and done a number in my heart and in my mind, and just put some incredible, awesome people in my life to help. Like you were one of them, to help me navigate life and walk through life and navigate the hard things, the emotional things, because we as men don't do that too well.
True.
And especially that, as me and AJ talk about a lot, is that we're avoidant, and we like to avoid all emotional things, and we will talk our way, logic our way out of having to deal with that in the upfront. And that was, I think that's probably one of the more sweeter things that I've learned about myself, that I'm kind of growing in, that you've helped me walk through. So, man, I appreciate you, bro.
Bro, it's a pleasure. It's an honor. I mean, I think that's one of the best things that, we get to experience. I think as brothers in Christ, but honestly as humans, is getting to use the things that we walk through in our pain to help somebody else, man.
Right.
Because obviously I know that, like, God's not going to take me through anything that doesn't matter and isn't pointless, but there is something to be said about, oh man, there's purpose and I get to see it, because you don't always get to see it.
Right.
But yeah, it was a crazy year. I think you're exactly right. Like, for some reason, the years from like 23 to 25 for me, I'll be 26 in a couple of months.
Dang.
I know. You about to give me a Kevin Hart clip, bro. Where he's like,
JK,
how old
I'm
are you?
older than you, bro. I'll be 26 on the 30th.
But that's the thing, is like, these past couple of years have felt faster than like the 5 years put together before that. And
No
I have
joke.
a theory about it.
Okay, I'm all ears.
I say this anytime I get the opportunity, right? Because when you're a kid, days felt so long.
Right.
And I remember, even in high school, right? Like, you think about when you were a freshman and you got to school and you were like, 2:45 is never coming. It's never going to be here. And now I feel like days are going by quicker. But my theory is that, say you're 8 years old. Okay? Each year at that point is an eighth of your entire life. Now, it's a 25th of my life.
Yeah.
It's a percentage less every year because you're adding more and more to it.
Right.
And so when you're 6 years old, that's a big percentage of life that you've lived up into that time.
Right.
I think when you get 40, 50, and it's like 2% of your life when you're 50, that's probably going to feel a lot quicker. And I think responsibilities like, bills being due makes time go faster too. You're like, I need money to pay rent, But
Yeah.
it is wild how time, I think, feels like it gets faster as we get older. But
One of my favorite childhood memories,
okay,
not paying bills.
dude, you remember like consciously being like, dude, I'm not paying bills right now?
I remember my first bill. I'm like, this is where it starts.
No shot.
I
When you're
remember
like,
this is where it starts.
Mom, Dad, I'm leaving the house.
I was like, crap. And it was the day I signed up for student loans. So, guys, if you are somebody that does not have a friend and you want somebody to always be there for you, hold you down, just get student loans because
They ain't going anywhere.
they ain't going nowhere and they will always hold you
You can
down.
declare bankruptcy and they sticking around.
Yeah. And so, if you're lonely in this season, get a loan.
That's right.
This
Like
is not
you
a
work
spon-
for them.
This is not a.
No, you
This is
sponsored.
not a paid ad. This is
You're
not a sponsored ad.
sponsored.
This is not
You're
sponsored.
Not yet.
Not yet.
They're gonna hear that and they're gonna be
come on,
talking.
2024. Holla at us.
Yeah, well, I think for me, I know you said that it was a year of growth. I mean, in a lot of ways, I think it was a year of unexpected growth for me. I think we hear a lot of times that the biology is that like 25 is the age that your brain fully develops.
I don't think it's true.
I have got no clue. But as far as what the executive part, the decision making, right,
yeah.
of your brain is supposed to be fully developed by 25. And so in a lot of ways, I expected to like be a little bit more set in who I was and what I knew. And I feel like a lot of things got turned upside down for me this year.
Like, I don't even know who I am.
I know.
I didn't know I didn't know this.
It is wild, maybe I think it's a human thing of us, right? You think when you're in middle school, can't wait to get to high school can't wait to go to college, can't wait to graduate, all those kinds of things. We always
the
like,
job, the house, the
we
marriage,
put so
the
much
kids.
weight on the things that
This
aren't yet
next,
here.
yeah.
And so I was looking at 25 like I'm going to feel a certain way, and I feel like I did when I was 17. I just hopefully make better decisions,
You know what I think it is, when backtracking a little bit to your theory of why time passes?
Yeah.
Because we're not in the present as much because we're always looking forward.
Yeah, it is
too
true.
much.
It is true.
If I'm always looking for what's next, this present seems like it goes by in a vapor.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, hindsight is always 2020.
Right.
Like, you look at January 1st, you feel like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
And it's about to be January 1st, 2024.
This year feels like 2 years put together. Like they're
Because so
different.
much happened.
Exactly.
Bro.
They're
Like,
different.
I can't even remember half the stuff that
I know.
happened. Like, at the end of the year, I'm definitely gonna like scour my journal and just reflect on
Yeah.
where I was in the beginning when I started grad and start journaling till like halfway through the year. But
That's a good time to start.
But still, it's better late than never, right?
That's right.
And so I just really want to see, okay, like how was my mindset then compared to now? What were the things I was praying for then compared to now? What were the things I was walking in then compared to now? Oh, this I did not realize this prayer was answered.
Yeah.
I'm glad I wrote it down.
Yeah.
And like, even though I think 2023 was a year of growth in a bunch of unexpected ways, like I genuinely believe, just for myself, not for everybody.
Yeah.
But for 2024, it's going to be a year of opportunity, right? Because why would you grow if there's nothing to grow in?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a good point.
And so
That's a good
not
point.
just opportunity, but opportunity plus obedience.
Yeah.
And so getting to the discussion of what's the difference in like an assignment versus opportunity.
Yeah.
Because in like an assignment, that's something, okay, guys, like, hey, you're going to do this. I want you to do this for me, and I'm using you to do it.
Yeah.
Be obedient, walk in that. And the opportunities are everything that come along the way. Hey, you enjoy doing this. You enjoy that. I think you'd be good at that. Or maybe you just want to try something, have fun, have at it.
Yeah.
But don't be mad that
Right.
it didn't work out. 'Cause
Right.
That's something God told you to do.
Yeah.
And so even in these opportunities, open doors, right? Hey, God, I'm asking, I'm seeking, I'm knocking. All right, the doors are open. Go ahead. Huh? Yeah, it's like, huh? You want me to walk?
Right,
I gotta
right.
go? You're not going to
Yeah.
push me to the door? No.
Yeah.
Take a step. Take
Yeah.
a step, brother.
Well,
So years taking steps.
It is how it is, like I think that in a lot of ways life, I think you start to understand just how quick it goes by because we've had a lot of conversations about these kinds of things, but even when you think about financial goals and family goals and those kinds of things, I think I hit 25 and I was like, wow, 30 is closer than I thought it was.
Right.
And I want to be somewhere different when I'm 30 than where I am now. And so you're kind of planning, you're gaming the system a little bit, you're being strategic. And so I think that makes it go by quicker because you're not just like sitting around. It feels like you have things to work with your hands. I'm gonna plan for a future. And sometimes I think that's ultimately one of the things that we talked about earlier, right? It stops us from being present. It's because if I'm always preparing for something that's not here, when do you stop? How do you know when to be present?
Stop and smell the roses.
Smell the roses. But I don't know. I think
roses stink, by the way.
Yeah, for me, it's been a wild year. I left the church that I've been a part of for most of my life, from 4th grade until last year. And it doesn't feel that way. I feel like I've known you and a lot of other people for years now,
right?
And I haven't,
right?
And so
it's been months.
We just had our 3-year anniversary being married, and so there's a wild you have all these expectations of what 3 years in is going to be versus when you first got married, and Whitney and I have grown and we're still growing, and that's just going to be it for the rest of our lives, But I think for me, man, in a weird way, I think a lot of years I set out intentionally being like, God, I'm going to be submitted, and I want what you want, And I think we all say those kinds of things, and I think this year was. It was one of those years, and maybe this is just being our age, but I remember we had a conversation at Chili's not too long ago, planning out kind of where we want to go, where we see this thing go in our lives, all those kinds of things. And I was like, man, it just kind of feels like a lot of the voices in my circle right now are all saying the same thing, which is like, hey, I think it's time for us to get our business together.
Yeah.
I think it's time to be an adult, and I think it's time to start getting to work on things that we want to work on.
Right.
And it was wild because, you're not talking to everybody else in my circle, and they're not talking to you.
Right.
But it just kind of felt like, I was having these phone calls a couple times a week. Someone's like, man, I just want to be really serious about this. And you're like, you? What? Me, huh? And this is also the first year that I've read, obviously I haven't finished because the year's not over, but the Bible from cover to cover, which when I first started, that felt embarrassing to say because I was like, dude, I'm 25 and everybody's been saying I'm going to be great in ministry for a long time, and I've never read the Bible cover to cover. I know a lot about it, but I've never read it through. And now I find a lot of freedom in I think this year was submission by acceptance in a lot of ways, which is accepting me to be human, finite,
right?
And going to a new church where people don't know me and there's not an expectation. Yes, I had friends that were there before, but I didn't feel like my worth was tied into what I did to build the building.
Right.
And there's a distinction, right? I think I got caught up in building somebody's building. I don't know if it was always God's. But I think taking those steps, being a little bit more consistent, I'd like next year to be more consistent in the things that I do. I think that's kind of putting some of that discipline in.
Yeah.
But for me, it's been a lot of, I thought it was just like me submitting myself. And I don't think you can submit yourself until you accept the position that's, I can't do it anyway.
Right.
Right? And so that preaches really well. That's hard to live out. But it's been a wild ride. I think there's been some crazy things. I was able to visit some fam I hadn't seen in a while for my cousin's wedding, which was great. Reminded me again I'm human and I need people in my life to make me feel human. Because I've always tried to run away from that avoidant thing. I just want to reason my way out of everything. But it's been nuts. It's been a crazy year, and it's felt like it's been 2 years packed into one. I think I heard somebody say the other day that this feels like the first year since COVID got kind of wrapped up for whatever it was that we restarted the world.
Right.
And it kind of feels like that.
Facts. Because think about this, bro. This might seem like a stretch, but the amount of Christmas parties and events in the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I have not been to that many Christmas parties in my life.
Yeah, I'm sick of it. For the record, I'm done with it.
I've been done. I was like, 2 weeks ago, I was sitting in my room. I was like, man, I'm so grateful that people would hang out with me and want me to be with them.
Right.
Because a year ago, I would have been begging for this.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have that.
Right.
Maybe went to one or two, and that was from church. I didn't really have friends like that. Like, hey, let's go do this, let's do that, and all that stuff. But now, I'm like, okay, I love y'all, but I gotta go home, man. I need to be with my family.
Yeah,
and stuff like that. So it's just so interesting how like we ebb and flow through these growth opportunities, and just to see how God just blindsides us so many times. Yeah. But every blindside, like you think about football, right? If you get hit by a blindside hit, that's like the worst, probably the worst pain.
Yeah.
Right? But the thing with that is, if I get blindsided by God, yeah, it may hurt, but it's hurting for the right purpose, right? It's not just hurting just to hurt. I don't have to be taking up the game.
Right.
I'm still in the game. It's like, hey, I blindsided you, but guess what? Even though I hit you, guess who's going to be one to walk with you and talk with you and sustain you and lift you up and encourage you and rebuke you and all these different things. He's like, hey, I really want to take care of you. And that's like, I think that's like the most beautiful part about it is I get this picture. There's a verse in Psalms 93, I believe, where it says, David is saying, I can ascend to the heavens and you're there, and I can go to the depths. Sheol. Yeah. And that you're there. And I get this mental picture that I just see God's hands, like one hand on top and one hand on the bottom, and everything that I'm going to be doing, regardless if I'm high, low, in between. Yeah. No matter how far low I fall, he's there. Yeah. No matter how high I go, guess what? I'm still in his hands. I'm still in his control, inside of his will. And so what you said about accepting that I can't do it on my own, I think that's when you really propel and rocket forward. Yeah. Because God's like, hey, I've been wanting to use you in so many different things, but you could not get out of your own way. Yeah. And that was, for me, was probably the most unexpected growth and like sternness from God. Like, hey, you need to get out of the way and let me be God. Yeah. Right. I have created you, giving you all these different gifts. People confirm that. You see that from what they say. You see it from what you do. You know what you're gifted in. Now, let me show you how to actually use this. It's good. Let me show you how to actually steward it and take care of it and multiply it. Because that gift is not just for you. That gift is to serve other people. That's the sole purpose of getting the gift, is to give it away. And I'm just like, man, all right, guys. So however you're preparing us, even in this very moment right now, in this conversation for 2024, is like you said, consistency. That's the biggest thing that I struggle with this entire year. Yeah. Was being consistent in whatever. No matter if I, like, you know, you get into those New Year's resolutions, right? Right. I thought about having an episode a while ago. It was like, I'm just checking in. How the resolutions coming? Yeah. Right? It's November. You're like, what? What's the resolution? I forgot about that.
It's not January yet.
Yeah. And so it's like, you know, I'm not setting goals next year. That sounds wild to say. I'm not setting goals. I want to set systems. Because when I set goals, that means whatever goal that is, there has to be a set way of steps that has to follow to hit this goal. Yeah, sure. And a lot of times, I don't leave room for God to move. Okay, maybe you shouldn't. Actually, you know what? Don't do this whole goal. What do you mean, God? This is a good thing. I don't want you to do that. Right. But if I set systems, okay, God, I want to be, say, for example, God, I want to be more biblically literate. All right? My system that I will set is, boom, okay, I'll get up at 6 o'clock when I have no distractions. Nobody's texting me. Yep. I have to get on a sleep discipline, which is excellent for your body. Yep. And on top of that, since I have no distractions, over time, why would God not show up and meet at 6 a.m.? Like, I hear people talk about how they have a regular rhythm of getting to the secret place or the place where God's glory dwells and what comes from that. And I'm just like, man, I want to experience that for myself. You know what I'm saying? We hear that thing about taste and see the Lord is good. I want to taste and see for myself. Yeah. And there was a point in this year that I did taste that. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. And then after that, I'm like, well, thanks. All right. Thanks. See you next year. But I didn't stay there. I didn't stay there because of the sole reason I was in there because I had a catalyst. Yeah. I was going through something. I had a heartache, a deep one, a lot of emotional wounds from things in my past, things in the present, some of the decisions I had made, and things that I've said. And now I'm like in a place where, all right, God, I want to feel and experience the fullness of your presence outside of hurt. I want to feel that in times of peace. Right. Because a lot of times in times of peace, that's when we get lax and pull back. Because you realize, okay, yes, peace is not something that I can attain. It's something that I accept, something that I walk in. Because I can't manufacture God's peace because he says his peace surpasses understanding. Like, I don't get it. Sometimes you've been in a worse situation. Like, wow, I don't know why I have so much peace. I'm chilling. Why? God got me. It sounds cliche, but you have that genuine, intimate trust and knowledge of him that you know that, okay, he's going to take care of that. So when I'm in this peace, I want to go deeper. Yeah. Because if I can jump in the deep end, if I can't swim, guess what? Let's go back to that picture. If I am in the deep water with him, I'm okay. He's not gonna let me drown. I might find out that I'm actually breathing, and then next thing you know, I'm learning how to swim. Now I'm navigating, and all of a sudden, you see somebody else comes to deep end, like, oh, hey, I see you up there, but how did you get down there? You swim back up, and you show them how to swim.
Yeah.
And I think that's so beautiful, like about community and showing people like the way, like preparing the way for the Lord to move not only in your life, but preparing the way for the Lord to move in other people's lives, and showing them that perspective of like, there's so much more to this Christian faith than just going to church, getting married, having kids, having a house, all these different things. Like, I'm starting to understand like, the riches in heaven is simply God's presence.
Yeah.
Like, his presence is so much sweeter than anything that he can give us.
Right.
And for me, it took me a very long time to like unlearn like the prosperity part of the faith.
Sure.
Which most people don't really want to talk about that much. And I'm just like, you know what, God? You're so good. You probably will bless us with some of that stuff.
Sure.
I will acknowledge that. But God, if you don't, I'm not going to change how I meet with you, how I talk about you, how I do my faith with you. Yeah. And so it's just I'm not doing things for you anymore. I'm doing things with you because you don't need me for doing nothing.
Right.
It's so a gift that the God of the universe, say, hey, you in Humble, Texas.
Right.
I want you to do this for me. What? The God of the universe wants me to do his bidding? Sign me up. Sometimes, I know, some things people are going to ask me to do in 24, I'm not going to like. Yeah. But that's all part of the process. I'm going to say, this is my yes. Y'all hear this first. This is my yes on the table. My predetermined yes. When it comes down to it, I'm not going to say, no, I'm not going to back down. God, I'm going to be honest. God, I don't like this. God, I don't see how this benefits anybody. But if you ask me to do this, I'm going to see it through. And not 10 times out of 10 at a stroke, you will see why he asked you to do that. Either to grow you, and also to help and steward and champion and love the people that he has sent for you to love. Yeah. And so
that's beautiful. You know, there's a lot in there, and there's a lot, even just a prosperity thing. You know, one of the best, I think, pictures God gives us is when he talks about heaven and talks about the streets made of gold. The next verse isn't, and everybody's trying to mine it and get it for themselves. Right. It's no. Some of the most valuable things that we have on earth are the things we walk on in heaven.
Oh, yes.
To get to what is the most valuable. And, you know, there's no sun. Jesus himself lights everything in his radiance. Yeah. You know, like it's almost saying, very intentionally, I think, that the things that we think are most valuable or contribute the most to how we deem ourselves successful or not are like second thoughts when confronted with the glory of God. I think you were starting to talk a little bit about community as well, and I think that's a big thing that I think it's what we do at this time of our life, and I don't think everybody's on the same path. You know, it's not like these are check marks that we hit at 25, but I just feel like for my community, I hear a lot more conversations about trying to understand why we do what we do. Yeah. A lot more conversations about self-awareness. A lot more, hey, ownership of how I acted and maybe I messed up and I need to find out what's going on there and what's underneath that. But also, I think that a huge distinction around this time, and I don't think everybody's guaranteed to get this. Right. But I think that what you're talking about too is this kind of balance of understanding what is the role that my friends have in my life and what's the role that God has in my life. Because I think for a lot of years before this year, I would never say it out loud. Like, I don't think that I want friends more than God. But I think my actions would have said that I believed that sometimes. Right. That I thought that people were more important to my well-being or my success or even carrying out what God wants me to do than time with him. And so I think that maybe, like I said, maybe it's just this time of life. But I think a lot of our friends are trying to figure out that balance of, hey, friendships aren't what I thought they would be at 25. Being an adult is different and it's weird. And because of that, I think a lot of that is us unlearning those spots where God's like, hey, this is something only I can fulfill in you, but you've been trying to fill it with your bestie for the resties. Right. And so I haven't had a spot. And I'm not going to compete with them. Right. I'm going to wait for them to disappoint you. Whew. And that sucks, right? Because this is that age where we're all still like kind of thinking about the people who have hurt us the most relationally. Friendship, romantic, whatever it is. And I think a lot of it's our own doing because we refuse to yield what was God's property in our life. Right. In that way, you know, 2024 becomes an exercise in, okay, God, I've seen you come through where other people have failed me. Am I going to be more willing to be consistent and give you more in the next year? You know, I think that when it comes down to it, the way that we thought friendships existed and healthy friendships, what they look like, when you're put in a room, at least my experience, we both went to Atascocita High School for a while, and you're in a classroom with 30 other people in a lot of those classes, and so you're brushing shoulders up against hundreds of people, whether you're walking down Main Street or all those kinds of things, and it's just not how life is. You're not putting these like little glass bottles of, oh, here's a bunch of human beings that you're going to talk to all the time, and so your expectation has to die in a lot of ways. I was having a conversation with a student that I used to be a leader over, and we were talking a little bit about some relationship pain that had happened, and I was like, I feel like this is maybe a lesson I'm still learning today, and so if it's valuable to you, you're going to get ahead, right? This would be great. This is a little cheat. But I think God very intentionally has to make sure that we don't fall in love with the promise over the promise giver.
Yeah.
But the way that plays it out, I think a lot of us stop right there, where you're like, yeah, of course God doesn't want us to. But that means that sometimes if you're Abraham and Sarah, that you get a promise, and then it looks like it's not going to happen anymore.
Right.
It's not like, oh yeah, God's going to do it. It's like the opposite happens, right? It's the... specifically, we were having a conversation. Hey, I feel like I'm supposed to marry this girl, but now we're broken up. And I was like, perhaps his point too, and a lot of, but I've made a great connection with their family, and so they've been huge for me, but it's weird and all that kind of stuff. It's like maybe God needed you to have that support, but he was only going to rope you in through this way. And maybe now, instead of fixing your eyes on this girl,
you fix your eyes on him.
It's going to happen because he says it's going to happen and not because of what you do.
Right.
So then you have to have this conversation all the time and check our hearts all the time. Hey, God, I really believe you said this was going to happen. And one of the points that I make on this podcast whenever I get the chance, and when I was having that conversation with this man, was the way that God chose to save humanity was through resurrection. Now, in the Bible, we read that the same power that rose Christ from the dead lives in us. Yeah. Okay? And we have a lot of Christians that are afraid to let their dream die.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
That doesn't make sense to me. Because you serve a God of resurrection.
Right.
Which means if you want the power that raised Christ from the dead, that means some things in your life you're going to have to let die so that they can be risen to what they're supposed to be. This is why, it's certainly not a rule of nature, right? But I feel like a lot of really successful relationships that I've been around, husband and wives, had a time where they broke up.
Actually, now I think about it, that's crazy.
Right?
I can name almost every single time, every person.
Yeah,
that
Whitney and I did.
Who are in a very serious, committed, loving relationship. Oh yeah, we broke up for a while. We broke up for a while.
And I think it's because that's the place. I mean, obviously, if you're a Bible geek, like I am, your brain should immediately go to Israel in the desert. It's not just where they were being disciplined, but it's where their expectation went to die before they could actually receive what God actually had for them.
Right.
Because all they've known is Egypt. Now they're getting brought into a different way of thinking, living, acting, all of those kinds of things. And so they had to get an expectation out of their head so that they could actually receive what it is. The point being, God might make a promise to you, and he might use words that you think you know what they mean. They don't always mean what you think they mean.
And that I remember hearing that the first time when I was looking at this Bible study and in this devotion, they're like, yeah, sometimes what God says he doesn't mean. And I was like, that rubbed me the wrong way. What do you mean? Not my God.
Never.
Not my Elohim. No, what he says he means, what he speaks in existence happens. But when he tells you you're gonna be successful, what does that mean? Oh, I'm gonna have money, I'm gonna have possessions.
Tesla, baby.
Nah, but you're gonna be successful in love. Now you're rich in mercy, now you're rich in patience.
And breaking family curses, man. It's different. Because that's the thing, when God says something, he knows what he means, and he knows what you're gonna think he means. He's playing 3D chess, bro. It's different.
And the beautiful thing about that
4D chess, by the way, not 3D. We play 3D chess, by the way. That was dumb.
But the beautiful thing about that, bro, is even he knows that we are not going to understand.
Yeah.
Half, 90% of the things
And not
he tells us.
we're going to misunderstand.
And even in that, he's like, I know, but this is an opportunity for you to get close to me,
Yeah.
so I can reveal to you the truth of of my statement.
Yep.
It's like it's like the idea of like God keeps secrets from us. He does.
Yeah.
There are things that he will not tell you because you're not close enough to him. He cannot trust you with that thing. If God was gonna tell you, hey, you're gonna be a millionaire next year, you're gonna be like, oh, this is great. But when it comes time for you to put in a millionaire work ethic, and then like you said, let all these things die, and then you have to get disciplined, and you gotta do all these things. You gotta steal this, you gotta move cities, you gotta do that. You're like, I don't want it.
Yeah.
I don't want it.
Right.
But if you're close enough, he's like, hey, I have something great in store for you that can not only change your life, but it's gonna change the life of so many people around you.
Yep.
If you just walk with me, I will show you. And usually in that we're like, I'm curious. All right, let's do it.
Yeah.
And a lot of us are just not curious enough to actually try and see, not like test God in a like competitive way.
Yeah.
But I am testing you to see. Okay, Dad, I'm testing your character right now. You're saying this is you. Show me.
Right.
Prove it to me. And he wants to desperately do that. He wants us to see that he is good. He wants us to see that he does care. He wants us to see that he does want to take care of us and show us the right way to live. But it comes with us humbling ourselves, getting out of his way, and then just simply taking a step towards him. Because a lot of times we play for clarity, but how can you play for clarity when you're not walking towards the one that is clear?
Yeah.
Like something that my friend told me one time, it's like God does not necessarily have to be direct to be clear. And I was like, oof. I was like, hold on. I was driving, and he said that. I was like, hold on, bro, stop talking. Stop talking. I'm about to pull this car over the side of the road, bro. I'm about to pull over right now. Rerouting, like straight, like that's a bar. He does not necessarily have to be direct to be clear.
Yeah.
Like that hits. And so it lets me know that there needs for me. I need to sift through. I need to go with the changing of the wind and the differences and all these things. I need to shift whenever he shifts. I need to move with him. And so, yeah, bro, it's such a beautiful thing when you really open your mind and receive that perspective. Like, you know what? I really can't do this by myself. Matter of fact, I can't do nothing without him. So once I really truly understand that, not just because it's like you said, it preaches very well,
right?
But the practicality of doing that is very difficult. But I think once you get to the place where you are doing the difficult things more often, it's no longer difficult.
It's a muscle you work out.
It's easy, and then it becomes enjoyable.
Right. Faith, it's a muscle, right? So the more things that I take a step of faith in, the more I'm growing that muscle, the more I have a track record of God coming through.
Yeah.
All of those things should inform my next step. So I should be more willing to do it. But, yeah, I mean, we don't, and I get it, you know, like, sometimes you don't want to be the pastor or the preacher that gets up on stage and is like, hey, you know, God may have told you that you're going to have a $10 million worth in 5 years. But what he didn't tell you is you're going to be bankrupt next year. And you're like, huh? What?
That don't sound like God.
You never want to feel like you're putting things in between people and God, like making it harder for them. But, like, I think dishonesty makes it harder, you know? And sometimes it's because we haven't experienced it ourselves. But, you know, taking Abraham and Isaac, it's just one of those weird things, right, where we know God is all-knowing and he says something as if he learned it for the first time. It's one of those points in the Bible that's like, that's a weird thing for some God that knows everything. And so obviously we're informed by other scriptures in the Bible that, like, God's ways are not our ways. His thoughts are not our thoughts. And so it's gracious of God to use words that we understand, because if he didn't, we wouldn't get it.
Right.
But this is one of those spots that I think, you know, when I was reading through the Bible this year, that I was like, I had to kind of sit and stay with it for a little bit. Because obviously we know that if you were raised in church, Abraham takes his son Isaac. He's going to go make a sacrifice. And he's telling Isaac the whole time, the Lord will provide. The Lord will provide. Okay? But Abraham knows God has told him, Isaac, your son, is the sacrifice, right? So he goes to the mountain. He's getting everything. Long story short, Isaac's like, where's the sacrifice? And he's like, get on the altar, boy. You know? And so he's got him tied up, knife raised, ready to go. And God stops him. And then I think that's where we, like, obviously this is a picture of Christ coming. It's a picture of the gospel. Yes.
Right. Yeah.
And we kind of, we're like, yeah, that's a cool story. But here in the chapter, what it says, after Abraham sees that there's a ram that's going to take the place of his son, and essentially God says, hey, don't hurt him. Here's what he says in verse 12. I think this is Genesis 22, verse 12. It says, don't lay a hand on the boy, the angel said. Do not hurt him in any way, for now I know that you truly fear God. You have not withheld from me even your son, your only son. Now, quick side note, the angel here is referring to the angel of the Lord, okay? So it's not like another angel that isn't all-knowing. It's God.
Yeah.
And so, for now I know that you truly fear God. As if he didn't know before, right? This is something that Josh and I talked about in a series that we preached this year. I don't think God is saying that because he's learning for the first time what Abraham is made of. But I think he's saying it for the benefit of Abraham because he's learning what he's made of.
That part.
The point being, imagine what it must feel like to be Abraham, to be obedient, and for you to hear God, who's created everything, who called you out of the land of your fathers, onto this big journey to say, now I know you're the real deal. Do you know what that would do to you? Like, after that, it really, I think to me, it beckons to Jesus being baptized. This is my son with who I'm well pleased, right? Yeah. There's a similar kind of tone about it. But it's like, oh man, God knew what I was going to do. I don't know what I would do in that situation, though. You know? So some of this is a conversation of not only is God going to work these things out in a way that is not linear in your life. Promises aren't going to be step A to step B to step C. They're not going to make sense. But it's all because not only is God trying to get something to you, he's trying to do something in you. Yeah. He's trying to change who you are. Right. And so at 25, having more of a record than I did at 18, and I believed in God then, but I feel like at 25, I'm like, yeah, but I believe in God more because of what I've seen. It doesn't mean I don't doubt. Right. It doesn't mean that I don't have these moments where I'm like, God, I can't believe you're doing this. This is wild. But it does mean that I have 7 more years now. That's a lot of years. 7 more years now of watching God come through when I step out and watching me miss out when I don't. That sucks. But yeah, that's the thing, man, is I feel like in a lot of ways, it's not a perfect analogy, but sometimes it feels like he's got a little carrot on a stick for us. Yeah, I've trying to get us where we need to go without us knowing where we're going. Because in a lot of ways, it's like, would I have done the work of maturing as an individual if I didn't see Whitney and in my head make that decision that this is worth it to me? I would like to say that I would have done that hard work anyway, but I know myself enough to know there's a big chance I don't do that unless God is like, hey, here's why. And I need you to know this, but I'm not telling you anymore. Yeah. Because you get too much. It's too much for a reason. But, you know, this is also one of those conversations I think you look back in on 5 years and you're like, I didn't know anything then either. You know? Yeah. Who cares? It's like this perpetual cycle of, oh, I found something new. What? Oh, I found something new. I know nothing. What? I knew nothing. And I just think, like I was talking to Katie the other day, I was like, you know, something that just really excites me about just doing life with God, there is this sense of limitless growth. Yeah. With him. There is so much that we just don't know. Right. About the simplest of things. I'm not talking about the complex things and the things that rack your brain for years and equations that can't be cracked once in a century. I'm talking about the very rudimentary, mundane things that we just miss out on, don't know how God is moving in that. And when he like it says in the Proverbs, he uses the simple to confound the wise. Right. I'm just like, who would have thought? Like, just for example, we was in California for a mission trip. Who would have thought a coffee and a donut would lead to salvation? Right. So I thought I was supposed to lay hands on somebody and they'd get slain in the spirit first. I'm like, you pull up. You're the only English-speaking person in your car. You taking everybody's order, right? Oh, I want a coffee this, I want a coffee that, I want a donut, blah, blah, all that stuff. And then we ask you want to pray, you get out of the car, and all the next thing you know it,
you're surrendering your life to Christ.
Yeah.
A simple coffee and a donut. Or on the same corner, you have a sign that just says, have a good day.
Right.
People pulling over like, you know what? Every day I drive to work, hating my life, hating my job, but I see that there is something good. I don't know what y'all got going on here, but there's something good about that.
I needed it.
And I'm actually excited to go to work today. Like, that brightened up my week.
Yeah.
Something so simple can have such a profound impact. I'm just thinking, like, I feel like this Christian faith is us just trying to master the basics our whole life.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Once I think there's a point to where God will allow you to get to the advanced things of the faith, but that comes with serious, intimate relationship with Him.
Yeah.
But it always gets to the point to, like, the rule of mastery. You got to do like 10,000 hours or something to master something, right?
Right.
The number's always up for debate.
Yeah.
But if I put in my quote unquote 10,000 hours of prayer, my 10,000 hours of reading, my 10,000 hours of serving, my 10,000 hours of giving, right? My 10,000 hours of fasting, what would that look like?
Yeah.
Like, if you just legit, like, granted, I don't want us to have a scoreboard mentality to where, if I'm not hitting this metric, I'm not doing anything good.
Right.
Because I don't think that's true. But what would your life look like if God's like, hey, you put 10,000 hours in, I will show you.
Yeah.
I will show you the limitless of who I am.
Well, I think the thing to round that out is, there's this discussion a lot around kind of how Western Christianity has redefined in a lot of ways the message of Christ. And I don't mean to say that they've made it untrue.
Right.
But sometimes we emphasize things that I don't think are the most important.
Right.
And I don't think that means that Eastern way of looking at the world is the only way either. I think they play in harmony together. But this was something that I was kind of learning really a lot in the middle of the year, was that one of the things that we have to catch ourselves in is that in Western civilization, Christianity and the pursuit of God becomes a quest of understanding and knowledge. And that's not inherently evil. Like, it's not an evil thing to wake up and to say, I want to know more about God.
Right.
There can be an arrogant approach to it.
Right.
That you think when you get an operating room, God's on the table and you're not. That's arrogance, right? And that's the Western view, right? Like, I think this is why sometimes people approach the Bible and they're not moved. It's because they think the Bible's the thing that's on the autopsy table, or they think the Bible's the thing getting surgery done.
What do I think about this?
But the Bible tells us in Hebrews, it's living and active.
Yeah,
and it'll pierce you. And so the picture is when I open the Bible, it's actually opening me.
It's the only book that reads the reader.
It's reading me.
Yeah.
And so this is where Western thought can kind of get off and it can get wrong. But the difference being, if Western was about understanding, then Eastern would be about experiencing. And that's an incredibly important distinction to tease out.
Yeah.
Because one of the ways I heard it put this year was, if you were talking about a frog, right? You just found a frog. Western medicine and thought process would be able to dissect the frog for you. It would be able to tell you why it lived, how it lived, what it ate, how the organs moved together. We would understand more about it. But if you asked an Eastern thought process about the frog, the answers and the questions you're going to ask are different. They're going to ask, did the frog have a name? Did he have a girlfriend? Has he gone through something? So this is one of those things, right, where we're like, I think we almost like edit and translate these things as we're reading them. But when we talk about in the beginning, right, when Adam and Eve, he says, and Adam knew his wife. Well, the way we use know, what does that mean in our context? Understood more about her, which I think there's an argument that maybe there is some, but clearly he's talking about an experiential relational moment of intimacy. I knew her. It was an experience. And so when God says he desires for us to know him,
experience.
It's not because he wants us to open up the Bible and study him.
Right.
It's because he wants us to experience him. And so in our quest for excellence, understanding, growth, consistency, this is why you might spend your whole life reading the Bible and miss the entire point. Because if it's not about connecting with God, then you don't actually want what God wants.
Right.
He wants connection with you. So we have to ask ourselves as we kind of go on to 26 and we go on for another year and all that kind of things. are the ritual and rhythms and systems that I have in my life right now, especially spiritually,
Right.
are they about knowing more, or are they about experiencing more of God?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you were hitting on, right? Is that, hey, you experienced God earlier this year and it was different, right? But in a lot of ways, I think we kind of boil it down to the head knowledge, and it becomes a very heady kind of thought experiment sometimes. But that's why we have to work, I think, in the Western culture we're in, we have to work even harder to be more diligent,
Right.
to focus on the experiential of God. One of the other things that was said about it was that I think Western civilization spends a lot of time trying to prove whether or not God exists, right? And Eastern would be like, it's assumed. It's assumed that he does.
Right.
Because you experienced something with him. You didn't know something more about him today. I experienced. So when we're asking God, I want to know more about you, God's saying, great, I want you to come sit with me, not so I could teach you what 1 Thessalonians says, even though that might be valuable. But it's because in teaching you what 1 Thessalonians says,
You will see.
you're getting to experience me. It's different. And we're not good at that.
Right. And because we live in such a hustle culture.
Yeah, the grind.
Hey, the grind. Oh, I'm a put in my 40 hours. I'm gonna do this and this and this and this. But let's take that, like you said, the Eastern view and the Western view should coexist.
They
right?
should.
If we go back to the 10,000 hour thing, right? If I am putting in 10,000 hours, okay, God, this is me committing to whatever you want to do in this 10,000 hours. I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And I'm not doing it with an agenda. Granted, my agenda is to get to know who you are.
Right.
But I'm not doing it with any bias, any
Right.
preconceived notions. I'm putting the slate clean. God, however you want to form me and build me up in this moment,
Yeah.
please do so. I am making myself available. And you mentioned this earlier about like we just don't make enough room for him because we have all these other things going on. We have all these other dreams going on. Even all this disappointment, all this hurt, we're holding on to so much stuff. Like when I hear about when we say we are a new creation, the old has passed away and the new has come. We
Yeah.
are to be renewed by the transformation of our mind, right? And all these different things. Like he is telling us, hey, you are like a step away from your glorified body. You will never be perfect until you meet me in the sky, and
Right.
I will show you all who you were created to be.
Yeah.
But because you live in the fallen world, because you're in a sinful nature, like our bodies are only made for the earth. And he is so good to bless us and show us and mold us to who he still wants us to be, even though he knows we are corruptible. Like I love 2 Corinthians 15 when it talks about the mortal can't clothe itself in mortality.
Yeah.
And all these different things. And at the end of that verse, it talks about, at the end of the chapter, it talks about death, where's your sting? Because it's like, hey, death is not the end. Death
Yep.
is just the beginning.
Yep.
And I think about that. I'm just like, oh my gosh. But when it comes to like the questioning the authority of God, like I was reading Luke 20 today because I'm doing the 24-day like Advent thing.
Okay,
And
yeah.
it's been awesome going through Luke
That's dope.
a chapter a day. And I got held up on verses 1 through 8, and they're questioning the scribes or questioning the authority of Jesus. And I find it very interesting for several reasons. They're asking us, they ask Jesus, hey, tell us by what authority are you doing these things? Or who is he who gave you the authority? And Jesus says, he answered to them and said, I will ask you one thing, and you answer me. The baptism of John, was it from heaven or from men? Right? And I find it interesting that he asked that specific question because he knew that they knew and accepted that John was a prophet sent from God.
Yeah.
And so it's crazy in verses 5 through 7. I was reading, it says they reasoned among themselves, saying, if we say from heaven, he will say, well, why did you not believe him? But if we say from men, all the people will stone us, for they are persuaded that John was a prophet. So they answered that they did not know where it was from.
Right.
So I find that's crazy. And Jesus like, well,
Got him.
if you don't know, then guess what? I don't know. I don't know. And I think,
So petty.
and I think that's so human of him.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
that's also so godly of him.
Yeah, authoritative,
Because
right?
he's perceiving their thoughts. He's perceiving the deceit that they're trying to get him. Because he understands,
Right.
one, that his time has not yet come.
Yeah.
A few chapters later, you'll see. Pain. Spoiler if you haven't read it. Jesus dies. But guess what? He comes back.
Spoilers. Crazy.
And I just see it's so crazy how they understood that, like,
the
yes,
repercussions of their answer.
That, but they knew what the truth was.
Yeah.
They just chose not to accept it.
Yeah.
And in the Western society, that's all you hear. It's my truth versus your truth. What is the truth? Is it relative? Is it subjective? Like, what is it? You know, all this moral gymnastics that we're doing and all these things. I'm just like, but the Bible says eternity is in our hearts, in our beings.
Yeah.
And so if you say you don't think about it, I don't think that's true. You might think about it a lot. You might not think about it a lot, but you thought about it.
Right.
And if somebody starts asking you, like, I don't want to think about that because why? Because it scares the mess out of you because you just don't know.
Yeah.
But thank God I serve a God that does not work on maybes.
That's good.
And don't work on,
let's
good. Roll the dice and see. Work on, let's see who can outweigh the good and the bad. You couldn't tell me all the bad things you've done this week.
Yeah.
You probably can't tell me all the good things you've done this week because you don't know. A lot of times your moral compass is jaded. What you think was good could be completely bad to somebody else.
Sure.
And what you think was bad is good to somebody else. So thank God it's not based off of my performance.
Right.
But it's based off the condition of my heart. I'm just like, man.
Yeah. That's good. That's good.
And so, man, honestly, as we step into 2024, brother, man, let this be a year that is just marked by us being obedient to the Lord, brother.
Yeah. No, that's good. Yeah, we're going to shift gears here just a little bit. Mm-hmm. Kind of wrapping up what 2023 has been to us this year. And obviously, it's not over. There's still a couple weeks, and God is God. He can do anything He wants. Right. And so if we have to make another update because something crazy happens, we'll do that. But, you know, now looking forward, you know, because I have this thought kind of a lot whenever, and I think we've answered it already, but it's just kind of a question that's in my head a lot is hey, AJ today gets to talk to AJ from a year ago. Mm-hmm. What is he saying about the year coming up? And so it's a cool little fun thought exercise because you'll have to be able to put into words what you think you've learned or what kind of encouragement you think you need to get through whatever's going to happen, you know, because not everybody had great years this year.
Right.
But it's funny to kind of flip it on his head and be like, what do you think he's going to say next year? You know, what's going to go happen? And so, you know, we've had a lot of conversations more recently, I think, about what this podcast is to us and why we think it's important, but also kind of, you know, what's our intention with it? Because I think that we'll be the first to say we're happy with, I think, the response that we get from it. You know, I feel like every time we drop something, we're hearing from somebody directly, man, I needed that. That was crucial. Right timing. I loved this part. This one made me think. And so that's always, I think, one of the most fulfilling things that we do. But I think it's made us really sit down and have to decide, okay, are we going to do this, though, for real?
Fact.
You know? Because you and I both, I don't know if we've talked about it on the podcast. I think we did maybe one time, maybe briefly. But you've had this podcast more than just this year.
Yeah.
Right?
2021.
I wanted to start a podcast on my own this year. And so I bought gear last Christmas. I bought a whole setup. And I haven't done one. Right? And so I think together we've made like 8 episodes about. Maybe this one's 9.
Something like that.
Something close to that. And I think the response is really encouraging, but we had to sit down and decide, hey, are we going to put our full weight on this? Right. Like you were saying before, this is an opportunity that we have to use some of the things that God has given us. And I think in being obedient to God in 2024, I think we had to kind of sit down and ask ourselves, well, what does it look like to be obedient and to steward a podcast that God has given us? And so as you're thinking about 2024, what were kind of some of the things as far as the podcast went that you're like, hey, not only do I want to take the opportunity that I have, but to be obedient to what God has for me? What does that look like? What does lessons and blessings look like in the new year if we're saying, hey, from the outset, we want to be obedient with everything, and that includes this podcast?
Yeah, so what I think what 2024 looks like in general is just consistency. Yeah. I think if it's a good principle for anything. If you want something to grow, it has to have some consistency, some consistent pouring into, some consistent tilling of the soil, the consistent like planting of the seed. But understand that growth is of God. Like I can till the soil as much as I can. I can take all the rocks and all the weeds and all these things. I can fertilize the ground as much as I can. I can plant the seed, all these things. But guess what? I can't control how much water it is. I can't control how much sunlight it gets. And so all we can do is be obedient and be consistent in, okay, God, what do you want us to talk about this week? Yeah. Right. And we have a list of actually 30-something episodes, ideas that we're thinking about. We'll do most of them next year. So mark our words. We will do most of these. Yeah. And we just have a few of these. And like just one of my Man, I like all of them.
Of course, yeah, they wouldn't be on there if we thought they sucked.
I like all of them, but it's just like for me that's really personal. That I want to talk about is we're doing this like a how-to series, a how to do this, how to stop doing this. For me, I've seen this destroy the church. I've seen this destroy relationships. I've seen this and ultimately just destroy our connection with God and change the way we view the world and people in it is pornography. And that is such a heavy topic because it's so easily accessible.
Yeah.
And people don't understand the danger that they're putting themselves in by consuming that content and how it's reframing how they look at women, how they look at themselves, how they look at other men, all these different things. Like, you're going to run into these problems at some point in life, not knowing where they came from. But a lot of times you can go back and look, this was the root of it. And so by the grace of God, he has freed me from these things. Granted, don't get me wrong, we all have temptations here and there, but he has freed me from watching that and trying to please myself and all these different things. Like, I want us to live in so much freedom that we don't have to live in slavery and bondage to that one sin. That the things you can learn that can be translated to all other things, but that's just one of the things. But like, the biggest thing for us though would be consistency in dropping episodes like at the same time on the same day, so the people who are faithful listening to us, at this time we're dropping.
This time
we know it. I'm getting ready to repost it on Instagram. You better shout us out.
Shout us out.
Eventually, we're gonna go to YouTube, get some cameras set up, and get a nice studio space for us. But that's just things down the road. But I'm just letting you know, like, we are serious about doing this. Yeah. And so we can't be mad that God didn't do something we didn't ask for.
That's right.
And so we're making ourselves available. So, all right, y'all want to do this? I'm gonna stretch you.
Yeah, and we want to do our part.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, we want to do our part. You know, I think in a lot of ways, not only is this fun, obviously, but like I was saying, I think the response of people, we've had people, because we haven't posted in a couple weeks, and, you know, life is crazy. It's busy. Yeah. It's that time of year, but I haven't made it through a week without getting hit up by somebody in person or text like, hey, when's the pod? When's the next one? When's the next one? And so I think we owe it to the people that listen to really see what we can make this thing into. And I don't think that comes down to success in terms of, hey, can we get sponsorships and can we do this kind of stuff? Like, yeah, of course, right? If God wants to do that, then yeah, we're going to walk through that door. That, But it's really then about, it feels like, and this podcast could just be for the people that know us. And it might never get bigger than that. Amen. But it does sound like from the people that listen to us that they want more and that it's helpful. And so we want to give more. Some of the things that I think I'm really excited about episode-wise, and we're not going to go through all of these, but, you know, I love some of these questions, right? I'll give you 3. How to walk in confidence and not be cocky. Ooh. That's an interesting one, right? That's a good one. Imposter syndrome, big deal. Right? Good concept. Don't forget you're human, right? Letting yourself make mistakes and those kinds of things. But I think a lot of this is we want to build trust with the listeners. And we want you guys to know what you're going to get. Right. And so Sheldon and I have made a commitment to really step up our game in the new year. Right. And that's being disciplined in when we record and recording the same day and releasing on the same day. And so here's what you can expect from us. Obviously, we've got some awesome topics that we want to get into this year coming up. We would love to have guests on. Absolutely. We would love to have some of you guys listening to this on. You know, I know we've talked about it for a little bit now, but one of these episodes we're going to be filming with my wife and having a little marriage podcast and talking about that. And so we're excited for those opportunities. And if there's something that resonates, man, we want you to come on and talk about it. But what we want to be, you know, said about us, because we're not afraid of not coming through on these things, but we also do appreciate the, not even necessarily pressure, right? But like that you guys know what we're committing to, because it helps us hold up our end of the bargain. And so you can expect from us that we're coming back January 10th of next year. Yes, sir. That's our first drop. Okay? And that's going to start an entire schedule of the year where we're going to be coming out every other week. Now, we had a conversation about this. We're trying to, what's the right amount of weeks? What's the right amount of releases? That's the minimum that we're setting for ourselves. It might be more. It might get to once a week. Who knows? Who knows? You know, if we even twice a week. If we start picking up, let's pick up. Yeah, God want to do it. But here's the baseline we're setting for ourselves. Here's the goal we're setting for ourselves. We're going to release after that 10th every other week. Yeah. And the plan right now is we're going to release Wednesdays at 10 a.m. For a lot of us, that means that you'll have the opportunity to listen if you can and have the opportunity at work. It'll be there on your way home. Maybe you go to the gym, whatever it is.
Might do a little earlier, so for you early birds,
Yeah.
we said 6 a.m. because we can schedule it.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
So 6
right?
a.m.
Maybe on the drive.
Yeah.
Who knows? But the commitment we're making is that you are going to hear from us every other week. Sheldon and I, maybe another guest, but at least for those, which I think comes out to
24 episodes.
24 episodes at minimum. And so a lot of that is it's not just us being like, we think we can be awesome and do a great podcast. It's like, man, what in our life is only worth doing halfway?
Right. Nothing.
Because those things I get out of my life. It doesn't matter. This feels like it's worth doing all the way. And so I know I'm excited in this new year for us to really get put up against hey, what does it look like to actually work at this, right? And like you said, it's not because we think we can just do enough work to get something to grow, but I think in Christianity, a lot of it comes down to, hey, God's going to do his part, and he's going to ask us to do our part. And so we want to do our part in the new year. So we're coming back the 10th, and then we're going to be every other week.
Yep.
Right now, Wednesday at 10 might be earlier if it makes more sense.
Right.
But you can expect that every other week there's going to be something out that you can hear and talk about.
Right.
Now, some of that's going to depend as well on feedback we get, right? Some of that is maybe we are not mentioning a topic that you really want to talk about. We want to have question or Q&As, right?
Right. At the bottom of this episode, if you're on Spotify, scroll down to the bottom. There's going to be a section where you can say whatever you want. You hate this episode, you love it. I would love y'all to talk about that. So don't be mad when I talk about something if you're not asking us to talk about it.
Right?
Now, everything y'all put, probably not going to get talked about.
It won't.
But we'll pray on.
But it might.
We'll pray on what we should and should not talk about.
But it might.
But it might.
So,
put it in there.
It's a whole thing, right? We want to step up our game across social media. We want to just be serious about building whatever we can and seeing what God does with that.
Right.
But with that, that's what we're committing to, and I can't be more excited about what it could become and what it could turn into, because at the bottom line, one of the things that really captivated my heart about podcasting in general, and there for a long time I ran away from it because everybody had one, and I was like, I don't want to get lumped into the group of people that's they're starting a podcast now. And you might be saying, and that's fine, you know?
Say what you say.
I would listen just for me. At the point that I'm at with this, and why I wanted to start one initially, and why I was so thankful that I'm able to jump onto this one, it is just even for me, I would love to have almost like a video journal, an audio journal of where I was, what I was thinking, what I said, and maybe great conversations. Because we believe that the Holy Spirit is going to occasionally talk through us on something like this that needs to be said. And sometimes, maybe not everybody's like this. Sometimes I have the experience where I walk away and I'm like, I don't know what just happened. I don't know what was just said. And so I would like to hear that conversation back, because it wasn't me. So we do it because we love it. And because we have an opportunity here God has given us. But more than that as well, it's like, if nobody listened, I'd listen. Yeah. It's doing something for me.
Right.
And so I think it's always about finding a worthwhile cause to do anything, and this feels like it for us.
Absolutely. So, y'all know what to expect. Y'all know what we're coming with. And I just thank everybody who has listened up to this point this year. We love you. We thank you. And as you listen to this episode, I just want to encourage you as well to see what is it that you need to commit to 2024.
Yeah, that's good.
And not just make a goal, a New Year's resolution. What do you need to commit to it? And just a caveat, don't commit to something you're not willing to finish. Okay? You're just setting yourself up for failure. And
count the cost.
And that's just not, there's so many, that might be an episode.
It will be.
Some people are just built to fail. But that's... And I was one of those people. We just have bad systems and mindset. We gotta work through that. But we're going to talk about that
we will
at a later date. Well, this has been Lessons and Blessings. Sheldon.
AJ.
And we signing off. Peace.
Peace.